What's up, y'all? Welcome back. My name is Adama. I am a full-time writer and director for television and film, living and working in Los Angeles, California. And the story that we're going to be telling is my journey into this wild ass industry. So I've always been obsessed with TV and film, right? And it's been a constant in my life for as long as I can remember. And I plan on getting into that more in like another sit down video with my twin sister, who is also my creative partner, my writing partner, because there is none of this story without her. But let's get into how I actually started off really wanting to be in this industry, like make this my career, right? So this whole journey starts at Spelman College, right? So I went to Spelman for undergrad and I was an English major, but I was also a creative writing minor. I had two minors actually. One was Spanish, one was creative writing, but the applicable one here is obviously creative writing, right? So with my creative writing minor, I was taking a bunch of creative writing classes, right? So I was taking creative nonfiction writing classes, I was taking playwriting classes, but then I saw that there was a screenwriting class. And I was like, huh, I'm obsessed with writing. I've always been a creative writer, mostly like prose, creative nonfiction, a lot of short stories, that sort of thing. But even though I've always been obsessed with writing and equally obsessed with television and film, I never quite like merged the two together. Like I was never like, oh yeah, people have to write this and that's how these things get made. Like this is the inception of storytelling, right? For whatever reason, I went like 19, 20 years of life and then it dawned on me that I could write for TV and film. So I took my first screenwriting class, right? So in my first screenwriting class at Spelman, I finally connected my love of TV and film and my love of writing and just fell head over heels from that moment on. And it happened like that, like I was in. And so after that first screenwriting course, I took more screenwriting classes. I took some film history and theory courses. I took some production courses where I got to make some really shitty short films. But essentially, I was all in, right? Like emotionally, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be at. But here's the kicker. I was planning on going to law school this entire time. So here I am still masquerading like I'm pre-law, right? Like I bought a bunch of like study books. I like spent money on like a personal tutor and like courses and stuff like that. I wasted a lot of people's time and money, quite frankly, mine included. And I'll get into the specifics of this particular story more in another video, the video with my sister. But essentially, I took the LSAT, y'all. Like I sat down for the test. And it wasn't until mid LSAT that I realized I don't want to do this. Like I did not want to be there and I did not want to go over there to law school either. Like I realized that this is not the route for me. Again, the specifics of the story are really sweet and cute. My sister is deeply connected to my decision, but ultimately, we had a conversation during one of the breaks of the LSAT, and she told me to hang it up. Essentially, she said, maybe you don't go to law school, maybe you go to film school. And I said, huh. Like, I never thought about going to film school. I always knew that I was going to go to graduate school because in my family, that's what you do. I knew that I was going to graduate school and it was always going to be law school, right? But I never ever thought about film school. I didn't know anyone who had ever gone to film school or graduated from film school. I didn't even really know what kind of jobs you could get in the industry outside of writing and directing and cinematography, right? But I was like, yeah, great idea. That's what I'm going to do. And so by the time I got my shit together, I'd missed every deadline to apply to school for the following year. So I took a year off. And during that year, I sort of interned at this like small production company in Atlanta. I don't know if it still exists, but it's called Cafe Con Leche Media. Dilcy Davis, if you're watching, what's up, girl? But I learned so much at that internship. And while I was interning at Cafe Con Leche Media, I was also, building up my portfolio and working on my applications to film school. Now, I knew that I only wanted to apply to like the top 5 film schools in the country, along with like some safeties. My main reason for that was to convince my parents about the whole film school situation. And so, I'm half Nigerian and, my dad's Nigerian, my mama academically and idealistically might as well be. And so I knew that I had to like sell them on it, right? And so I was like, oh, I'm only going to apply to like the top 5 schools in the country. If I can get into the top 5 schools in the country or some of the top 5 schools in the country, then I'm meant to do this, right? And all they hear is that like prestige. So they're like, okay, like, let's see what happens. And so I apply, right? So I apply with a very specific type of application. My ideology at the time was to sort of shock the folks reading the applications into paying attention to me, right? Like I assumed that everybody wanted to go to like USC and AFI and UCLA and NYU and all that stuff, right? So I was like, what is going to make me stand out? I knew that I could write well. I knew that I could write something cool, and I knew that I could write something interesting, something that's really going to make them pay attention. So my strategy sort of entailed really, really focusing on the short film that I was making, and thus like the script for the short film that I wanted to make for my applications, and then also my personal statement. So that's what I did. That's what I spent my year off really, really cultivating, or at least a lot of the months during my year off cultivating. The short film that I ended up making is titled Ass Shots, and it's kind of what it sounds like, right? It's a short film about a young woman who really, really wants to get ass shots. And so it's about like that first doctor's visit, like consultation visit with the surgeon who is ostensibly going to do that for her. But it's called Ass Shots. So when I submitted my application, you looking at the script and you looking at my short film title, Ass Shots. And then my personal statement. I was like, I gotta keep it up with ass shots, right? Now all of these things are still very, very much in like the tone of writing that I like to do. Like I like to do things with humor in them. Oftentimes it's like dry and dark humor. Oftentimes it's both together. But I also like for my work to mean something, to be about something, right? So Ass Shots is essentially about a woman with severe self-esteem issues. It's a little autobiographical, not in the sense that I ever considered getting ass shots, but when I was younger, like high school, college age, struggled with body image issues, particularly about like how I was shaped on the bottom half of my body in comparison to like other girls and women that I was going to school with. And I lived in Atlanta, right? Like everybody gorgeous, everybody thick. And so I was a skinny mini. It wasn't my testimony. But anyway, Ass Shots is at its core about a young person, a young woman with some self-esteem issues, right? Now this personal statement, I started it off with something crazy. Like the very first sentence of my personal statement says something like, here's the first line from my memory. It was something like, and then my boyfriend at the time told me that he looks at the dude when he's watching porn instead of the girl. Who did I think I was? Like, what was I? I was like being provocative, right? And this is also not fiction. It's my personal statement. And so it's not fiction. And it was also really, truly about something, right? And it was something about myself. So, yeah, the goal was to shock people into paying attention. And it worked. Well, it worked for the most part, but we'll get into that in a second. So, yeah, I applied. I got into the top schools. Well, the top schools at the time. I don't know what the rankings are right now. Quite frankly, I don't know how much it actually matters. I'm gonna tell you one thing. Not a single person has asked me what my GPA was at film school in this industry. They don't care. But I got into the top schools at the time. The schools that I ended up applying to were USC, UCLA, AFI, NYU, Florida State University, because I was considering staying closer to home. Oh, and I also applied to Columbia's screenwriting program. Yeah, so Columbia as well. I ended up getting into all of them except for NYU. Um, you know, you win most, you lose one, I guess. I don't know. But I did get into Columbia, and I knew that when I went to visit Columbia, it was February. Snow was still on the ground. I was fucking freezing. I said, "Oh, baby, I will not be in New York. Not for, not during this time of my life. I will not be in New York and be freezing my ass off like this." And so then it came down to me deciding between, I think, USC, AFI, and UCLA. But I also knew that I wanted to direct, right? I very much knew that I wanted to be a writer director because so many of the filmmakers that I admired were writer directors, right? And so I'm going to get into like another sit down video about the year of filmmaking that sort of changed me, that like really solidified, okay, girl, this is what you actually want to do, even though it took me years after that to accept that fact. And so I went to UCLA. And again, I plan on doing a separate video about my film school journey specifically. And we can get into the nitty gritty about how I made the decisions and why I made the decisions I did between USC and UCLA. I think at the time USC was ranked number one and UCLA was two or three. I think maybe three. I think AFI was two. But we'll get into the specifics about why I chose UCLA over all of them. But good decision, y'all. I made a good decision. So now at this point, I have chosen the film school that I want to go to, and it's time to move to LA. So I start film school at UCLA in the fall of 2014. And film school was a wild time. It was, whew, I moved out here when I was 23, y'all. It's been 10 years, and I was such a different person back then. I was such a different person back then, and I had a lot of growing to do, and I did a lot of growing, both like personally, but in terms of me being an artist and a filmmaker. I owe UCLA a lot, and again, I'll get into more of it in the film school video, but I owe UCLA a lot, but glad to be on the other side of it. I'll say that. Overall, UCLA was a good experience. And yeah, we'll get into more about the nitty gritty of my film school experience in the film school video. So, okay, started in 2014 at UCLA, graduated in 2018 because the directing and production program is 4 years for some reason. I like to gripe about how long that program is, but I will say that the program is very in depth and you make a lot of movies. So, you know, I guess I guess it's for a reason. It's 4 years for a reason. So it's around graduation time, right? And I was at an internship at the time with Media Res Studios, and I knew that I needed to find a full-time gig, right? Like I was like, girl, you need some insurance or something. Like at this point I was off of my parents' insurance. I was like, you need a job with benefits. Figure out what you're going to do. And obviously, I wanted to find a job in the industry. So I was thinking about assistant gigs, right? My sister has since moved out to LA with me. She did go to law school, by the way, in Chicago. We'll get into it in another video. But she is working in LA in business and legal affairs. And so at the studio she was working at, they would get like emails about different assistant gigs and just different gigs in general that were available in the industry. And she saw a gig that she thought would be good for me, which was this research assistant gig. So there was a writer who was working on a film about a historical person, a real historical figure, and he needed a research assistant for at least the summer while he was working on this film project. And so I was like, oh, that's something I can do. Like I'm an English major, like I know how to research stuff, and and it's directly correlated to movie making. So I said, okay, let me try that. So I linked up with this guy. We got on really, really well. I was knocking it out of the park in the interview. And I was like, oh, I for sure got this gig. Didn't get it. He said that he was going to go with somebody else. But he did say that he really, really enjoyed me, and so he wanted to stay in contact, right? So luckily, my sister heard about another gig, and it was to be the second assistant to the president of DreamWorks Feature Animation at the time. At the time, that was, what is this, 2018? So 2018, this was Chris Defaria. And I love animation. It's no secret I love animation. And DreamWorks makes fantastic animated movies, especially during the era that I was growing up. And so I was like, boom, let's do it. And so had that interview, and then I got that gig. So 2018, I got the job to be the second assistant to the president of DreamWorks Feature Animation. He had two assistants because it's a big boy job. He needed a lot of help. But then 2019 came, and my boss told me that he was leaving. It was, reasons were murky. It was a little bit of drama, but he told me that he was no longer going to be the president over there. They were giving it to someone else who was coming in with her own assistant. Now, I find out this information like literally a day before I get an email from the guy who I was trying to get the research assistant gig from. And he was like, yo, the research assistant gig didn't really pan out with the person that I chose. I should have gone with you, but that's not what this email is about. This email is about the fact that I'm going to be showrunning a television series, and I'm gonna need a showrunner's assistant. Are you interested? And I said, oh, right on time, aren't you? And so DreamWorks actually did really, really want me to stay. They had assigned me a new desk, so I would be assisting another executive at the company, but I also knew that I really, really wanted to get into television, and these sort of gigs, like showrunners assistants gigs, writers assistant gigs, directors assistant gigs, they are so, so hard to get. And I just felt like this was an opportunity that I could not pass up. And so in 2019, I left. I left DreamWorks to go be the showrunner's assistant to David Matthews, who was the showrunner for season 1 of Them on Amazon, which was a horror series on Amazon. Now, this experience was really, really cool. David was a really, really great boss. He sort of let me do what I needed to do as an aspiring creative, as an aspiring writer and director. So he gave me time off when I needed to take meetings, because at this point I was finding representation. So when I needed to take meetings, he let me take time off. I did 2 Sundance labs while working for him, and so he let me take time off for those. And he was also just really adamant about making sure I understood the lay of the land. Like, it was not about me just assisting him, it was about me learning and growing in this industry. He was just a fantastic boss, and I know so many people have such tough assistant experiences, down to like just awful assistant experiences. But both of mine with Chris Faria and David Matthews were stupendous, absolutely fantastic. And so I worked with Dave for about a year. So I worked through the writer's room portion of the show, through maybe the top half, maybe the middle half of production of the show. So I was going to set and all of that stuff. But again, I had done a Sundance lab. So my sister and I did the Sundance episodic lab together. And again, that's going to be a separate video. But again, that was such a fantastic experience. And through that experience, the person who was running the Sundance Labs at the time was like, hey, I know someone who is looking for very specific writers to staff on this show. Are you guys interested in interviewing for it? And my sister and I were like, hell yes. The goal for so long had been to become staff writers on a TV show. And that's the very first step, or the very first level of writer there is on television shows. And we were like, if there's some way we can get this gig, like if there's some way we can get our foot in. And that's how we did it. And so we interviewed for that gig, got that gig. And so at the end of 2019, right before the holiday breaks, I tell Dave that I got this fantastic opportunity. He was bummed, I was bummed, but we were both like, this is what it's about, where you can start to achieve everything that you ever wanted, right? Like, this is it. So he was like, I'm sad to see you go, but excited to see you prosper. And so at the top of 2020, I became a full-time creative. My sister and I got staffed on our very first TV show as writers. It's called The Girls on the Bus. It's on, I think, Max right now. When we wrote on it, it was supposed to be on Netflix, and then I think it went to the CW and then landed on Max. And I actually don't even think we're credited anymore on that series, just because it went through so many changes after we wrote on it. And that's a whole thing that happens in the industry sometimes. But that was our first show, right? That was our first staff writing experience. And it's what got us into the door. So the Sundance Episodic Lab is how we got staffed for the first time, but how we made our first movie, Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, or at least the first step in making that movie, was from another Sundance lab, which was the Sundance Screenwriting Intensive. So I did that one on my own, and I did it with like a way earlier draft of Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. So during this experience, I met Daniel Kaluuya and his production company, 59%, and his producing partners. And again, this is in 2019, so I am still working as an assistant and trying to make things shake. But yeah, that was how we got our movie going. This was all at the same time. Also during this time, my sister and I got representation, which I'll talk more about getting reps in a separate video. But my sister and I got representation, and through the helps of our reps, we sold our first script ever. We sold an adult animated project to 20th Animated Studios. I was thinking about doing another sit down video, sort of chronicling like the animated show that never was, and the growth that has come from that experience. But y'all let me know if y'all are interested in that. But yeah, we sold that show. And then at the very top of 2020, this is like culminating the whole experience. We are now staffed. We have done 2 Sundance labs. We sold a script. Then we sell another script. This one is a live action drama series. Not a drama with a capital D, drama as in like it's an hour long. Tonally, it is, very much a dark comedy, a satire. At that point, we were like, we're solid. Like, we are firmly full-time creatives, top of 2020. And that's how all that happened. So that was my journey into this industry. Again, there were a lot of details that I didn't get too in depth with because I plan on doing separate videos for those things. But that's the gist of it, y'all. Like, that's how I got to where I am. That is like the beginnings, that is the journey. And obviously the journey is not over. I have done a bunch of stuff since becoming a full-time creative in 2020. A list of like my credits and all that stuff is in my intro video, the very first video on this YouTube page. And you know, hopefully I do a whole bunch more in a very long career of being a filmmaker. So that was my journey into the industry. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Please do all of the things, like, comment, and subscribe. Stick around for more story times about, you know, various industry activities and my life as a filmmaker. And also I do like life vlogs, like work life vlogs, creative time vlogs on this channel. So I'm really trying to make it like really cool and a fun place to hang out over here. So again, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I will catch y'all in the next one. See ya.